They say the people who betray you never change. They only get better at pretending. And Damian Reed? He was the best at it. The scent of smoke filled my nostrils. Sharp, bitter, final. I could barely move, half buried beneath shattered beams and scorched wood. My ears rang, the fire cracking like bones breaking in the silence. The heat pressed against my skin like punishment. I lifted my eyes. Just ahead, framed in the broken glass of the arched window, stood Damian. His arms wrapped tightly around Bianca Moore's trembling figure. He was crying. Always crying. "Scarlett," Damian murmured. There was pity in his voice. Nothing more. He didn't step forward. He didn't try to pull me out. He didn't even flinch as the burning chandelier groaned above me, about to crash down. "You have to go," Bianca whimpered, clinging to his shirt. "Please. I'm scared." He didn't hesitate. He turned and ran with her. He left me to burn alive. I smiled through the tears as the flames took me. After all these years of loving him, sacrificing for him, believing his lies, this was the ending I earned. So be it. The first thing I felt was cold. Not fire. Not pain. Just the soft chill of morning air on my face. I opened my eyes, blinking against the sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. My canopy bed. The pale yellow walls of my childhood room. My lavender throw pillow resting neatly on the edge, untouched by smoke or ash. I sat up slowly, my fingers trembling as I reached for the phone on my nightstand. I pressed the power button. May 4th. Oh. My breath caught. That date. That cursed, unforgettable date. The day I gave up everything for Damian Reed and he let me die. A sharp knock came from the door. "Scarlett? Breakfast is ready." It was my mother's voice, soft, alive. I froze. My mother had passed 2 years ago, collapsed under the weight of court trials and scandals, the pressure of our ruined reputation too much for her already fragile heart. But that voice, unmistakable, comforting, real. The door creaked open slightly. "Honey." She stepped in and my heart dropped. Her familiar face, elegant as always, peered into the room with concern. "You're still in bed? You're usually up by now." I couldn't speak. "Come down when you're ready," she said, brushing imaginary dust off her blouse. "It's your favorite, chive omelets and sourdough toast." She left the door ajar and disappeared down the hallway. I sat in stunned silence. It wasn't a dream. I'd come back. Back to the day everything began to fall apart. But this time I knew better. I showered, dressed in my uniform, and stared at myself in the mirror. Scarlett Lynn. Age 17. Brookshire Academy senior. Wealthy, well-groomed, naive. Not anymore. I applied lip balm and pulled my long hair into a sleek braid. Fate wanted to play games, I'd play better. At school, the halls buzzed with activity. Morning announcements echoed from overhead speakers, and groups of students clustered at lockers and stairwells, laughing and chatting as if lives weren't about to be ruined. I passed them all, every fake friend and backstabbing classmate. I already knew which ones would throw me under the bus the moment Bianca opened her mouth. "Scarlett." My stomach clenched at the sound. I turned slowly. Damian jogged up to me, school blazer draped casually over one shoulder, his tie half done like always. "You okay?" he asked, a little breathless. "You weren't in homeroom." I shrugged. "I overslept." He smiled like we shared some secret. "It's not like you to miss class." Not like me. The boy who would one day scream at me in front of the entire school, who would accuse me of jealousy and violence and insanity, who would let the world believe I orchestrated a fake attack to make Bianca look bad. He was standing here pretending we were still childhood friends. Pretending he still cared. I forced a neutral expression. "Things change." He blinked, confused. "Is something wrong?" I took a step forward and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "When Bianca screams in the alley this afternoon, don't expect me to save you." His brows furrowed. "What?" I didn't explain. I walked past him, heading toward my next class. That afternoon around 3:20 I slipped out through the east gate. The alley behind Brookshire Academy was quiet, shaded by tall walls and overgrown ivy. The perfect stage for a tragedy. In my previous life, Bianca's voice had echoed through these walls, high and terrified. "Help. Somebody please." Back then I had rushed in without thinking, afraid Damian might get hurt. Afraid of losing him. But all I'd lost was myself. This time I turned and ran in the opposite direction, pulling out my phone. "Emergency services, what's your location?" "This is Scarlett Lynn," I said clearly. "There's a girl being attacked by a group of older teens in the alley behind Brookshire Academy. I saw them drag her inside. Are you safe? I'm not with them, I said. But she's in danger. Please hurry. After hanging up, I slowed to a walk and tucked the phone away. My heart pounded, not with fear but adrenaline. I hadn't saved Damien. I hadn't stepped in. I hadn't died. I saved myself. I returned home before sunset. Our housekeeper greeted me with a polite bow, and I walked into the dining room like nothing had happened. My father sat at the head of the table tapping through news updates on his tablet. My mother was arranging fresh orchids in a porcelain vase. Everything was normal. Scarlett, my father said as I sat down, the Reeds called. Damien's in some trouble. Something about a girl being harassed at school. Bianca Moore. Of course. He says you ran away, my father continued, voice low. I took a deep breath. And smiled. I did. My mother looked up startled. I pushed my plate away and folded my hands on the table. I don't want to be engaged to Damien anymore. Scarlett, my father said slowly, we've had this arrangement since you were both children. The Lynn and Reed families have always been. Then it's time we broke the cycle, I interrupted. I won't marry someone who abandons me. My mother's eyes searched mine. What happened? I met her gaze. I just woke up. There was silence. Then my father leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. Let me handle it. He reached for his phone and began to dial. I stood and left the room, a wave of calm washing over me. In my last life, I had clung to a man who didn't love me, forgiven people who hurt me, and sacrificed my dignity for an illusion. This time I would live with my eyes open. This time, Damien Reed would learn that Scarlett Lynn was not a girl to be forgotten. She was the storm they should have feared all along. The doorbell rang just after sunset. I stood at the top of the stairs, hands resting lightly on the polished banister, watching as my father opened the grand oak door with slow, deliberate force. Sunlight spilled in, highlighting the figures standing outside like a spotlight on a courtroom stage. Damien Reed, flushed, jaw tight, blazer slung over his shoulder, stood next to Bianca Moore, whose posture screamed fragility. Her hands clutched the hem of her cardigan like it was armor, and her eyes darted up to me as if rehearsing how wide they should go for maximum sympathy. Scarlett, Damien called as soon as he saw me. We need to talk. Behind them, the Reed couple hovered, unsure whether to speak or brace for a storm. My father stepped outside, his presence thunderous even in silence. What do you mean bringing another girl to my doorstep while still engaged to my daughter? Damien shifted, the guilt flashing across his face too brief to be sincere. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it to me, my father snapped. Mark. Mrs. Reed gasped, stepping forward. Let's all stay calm. Mr. Reed grunted. It's just a misunderstanding. Kids panic. We're here to clear it up. I descended the stairs slowly, each step a reminder that I was no longer the girl who'd once cried into Damien's shoulder. I reached the last stair just as my mother appeared behind me. Scarlett, do you know what this is about? I nodded. They're upset because I didn't throw myself into an alley full of gang members to play the hero. A beat of silence. Mr. Reed's brows rose. Excuse me. Damien stepped forward. That's not fair. Bianca was in danger. She was crying for help, and Scarlett, she just ran. I didn't flinch. That's right. I ran. Mrs. Reed gasped. Bianca turned away like my words physically hurt her. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Damien's eyes narrowed. Scarlett, how could you be so heartless? She was terrified. I called the police, I said, folding my arms. You heard the part where I ran, but not the part where I did the responsible thing. You didn't even check on me, he barked. You just left. You're not my responsibility anymore, I said coolly. Bianca looked up, tears already forming. I was so scared. But I thought I was going to be dragged away. If Damien hadn't come. My mother stepped forward, placing a steady hand on my back. Scarlett, is this true? Did you really just walk away? I turned to face her fully. Yes. And I'd do it again. My father stepped in, his voice cold and direct. And why did you choose to run? Because I've seen how this story ends, I whispered. Not just in nightmares. In reality. Everyone stared. I continued. Even if I had gone, what would have changed? You'd have still blamed me if something went wrong. And Damien? He'd still have picked her. Damien flinched. Bianca's face paled. You're twisting things, Damien muttered. I'm clarifying them. Mr. Reed barked. This is outrageous. You're betrothed. We're nothing, I said. Not anymore. Damien took a sharp step forward, eyes blazing. You think running away makes you smart? You think that's strength? No. I think surviving does. Bianca reached for Damien's arm. Damien, don't. But he wasn't listening anymore. If it weren't for Scarlett's selfishness, he spat, you wouldn't have needed saving at all. She abandoned you like a coward. My father's eyes burned. Watch your tone. I'm not lying. Damien exploded. She's cold. She only thinks about herself. I'll never marry someone like her. I want the engagement annulled. Mrs. Reed gasped. Damien. I said what I said, he muttered, wrapping a protective arm around Bianca. Bianca sniffled, her tears running freely now. I didn't ask him to do this. I didn't want any of this to happen. Her voice trembled just the right amount. But something was off. My mother, ever the careful observer, looked at her sharply. Bianca, dear, are you telling the truth? Bianca's eyes darted toward me for a fraction of a second. Too fast. Too guilty. I took a breath. You know what, let's put emotions aside. I'll give you all the facts. I pulled up the call log on my phone and showed the timestamp. I called the police at 3:22 p.m. I gave them the location. I met the officers at the alley and gave a full statement. Damien and Bianca were there too. Mr. Reed's face fell. You went to the police? Yes, I said, voice unwavering. The gang was gone by then, but we all filed a report. I described the suspects, gave every detail I saw. The police even thanked me for being rational and responsible. Mrs. Reed folded her arms. Bianca? Is this true? Bianca trembled. I didn't want to involve the police. What if people at school find out? They'll say I was weak, that I was targeted because of how I look. She turned to me, her eyes brimming. Why would you do this to me, Scarlett? Why would you make me a spectacle? I raised a brow. Do you hear yourself? You were almost assaulted and you're worried about your image. Bianca gasped as if I'd slapped her. Damien stepped between us. That's enough. He scared Scarlett. She doesn't need you making it worse. I stared at him. I wonder, if the gang was so violent, why did neither of you have a single scratch? He blinked. Bianca's hand dropped from Damien's sleeve. I don't know. Maybe we were lucky. Or maybe you weren't in danger at all, I murmured. A flicker of panic crossed Bianca's face. Before I could speak again, Bianca let out a choked sob, grabbing her head. No, please stop. She dropped to her knees, her cries hysterical. I can't take this. If you all think I'm lying, then I'll just disappear. I'll never show my face at school again. Would that make you happy? Damien dropped beside her, gathering her into his arms. Bianca, calm down. She pushed against his chest, shrieking louder. Why did you call the police? Why couldn't you just let it go? I stood unmoved as Damien looked up at me, eyes sharp. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To ruin her. You're giving me far too much credit, I said. I don't need to ruin her. She's doing that all by herself. That night, silence fell heavily over the Lynn household. My father was in his study, phone glued to his ear as he spoke to our legal counsel. My mother sat with me in the sitting room, sipping tea in silence. Was that wise? She asked eventually. Maybe not, I said. But it was necessary. She reached over and gently took my hand. You've changed. I died, I said. And I'm not doing it again. She didn't ask what I meant. She only nodded and poured me more tea. The next morning began like any other. A quiet sunrise, birds outside my window, and the illusion that life might return to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. A notification buzzed on my phone as I finished tying my braid. Brookshire Academy group chat. Urgent announcement. Police will be visiting the school today for ongoing investigation. My lips curled. They were moving faster than last time. As I slipped into my shoes, I heard a knock on the front door downstairs. Moments later, the housekeeper's voice carried upstairs. Miss Scarlett, Officer Chin is here to see you. Perfect. I walked down, poised and calm. Miss Lynn, Officer Chin greeted me. We've reviewed the statement you filed yesterday. Damien Reed and Bianca Moore have provided matching accounts. But there's something strange. Go on, I said. The school has no record of any gang incidents in that area. And the security footage from nearby streets shows no signs of suspicious movement during the time of the alleged incident. And Bianca? I asked. She's avoiding our questions. Very nervous. But this morning, one of our officers identified one of the so-called attackers from your descriptions. He pulled out a photo on his phone. That's her cousin, I said instantly. I've seen him pick her up from school before. Officer Chen nodded gravely. We think she staged the attack. And just like that, the truth was out. The school auditorium buzzed with whispers. The entire senior class had been called in for a safety update. But everyone knew why we were really here. I sat near the middle, arms folded, watching the front. Principal Dawson stepped up to the podium. His eyes scanned the room with tired gravity. Students, as many of you know, there was an incident yesterday involving one of our own. We take these matters seriously, and the police have been involved since the beginning. In light of new developments, Officer Chen would like to say a few words. Gasps erupted as Officer Chen stepped up and cleared his throat. After reviewing evidence and questioning involved parties, it has been confirmed that the attack yesterday afternoon was staged. Dead silence. The individuals who cornered Miss Bianca Moore in the alley were identified as her relatives, friends of her older cousin. She requested they stage the incident so that Damian Reed could rescue her. A collective inhale swept through the hall. All eyes turned to Bianca, who sat 2 rows ahead of me, frozen like a doll with glassy eyes. Damian sat beside her, pale and stunned. Miss Moore admitted this was her idea, Officer Chen continued. She felt it would prove Mr. Reed's feelings for her. Though no physical harm was done, this is a serious misuse of emergency services and puts others in danger. Bianca suddenly stood, swaying slightly. I did it, she shouted. I did it for love. Gasps again. I couldn't bear to see Damian with Scarlett. He was supposed to be mine. He just didn't know it yet. Her voice cracked. So I created a moment, something unforgettable, to make him see the truth. She turned to Damian, tears spilling. You risked your life for me, Damian. Because deep down you love me. Don't you? He looked like she'd slapped him. He swallowed. I don't know what to say. Her hands flew to her chest. Say you feel the same. Say you don't want to marry Scarlett. And that's when he finally turned toward me. Scarlett, stop holding on to me, he said quietly but clearly. Please. Let me go. The spotlight didn't even flicker. I stood, smoothed my skirt and walked out of the auditorium without a word. No one stopped me. Not a teacher. Not a classmate. Not Damian. By the next morning, everything had changed. And nothing had. Rumors spread like wildfire. Scarlett Lynn faked the police report because she was jealous. She tried to make Bianca look bad. Poor Damian. Caught in the middle of 2 crazy girls. It didn't matter that the police had confirmed the truth. It didn't matter that Bianca had confessed. Someone had twisted the story again. And now, somehow I was the villain. I walked into class and the conversations halted. Even my desk mate, Jane, turned away, placing a folded piece of paper on my desk instead of speaking. I opened it. You shouldn't have dragged Damian into your mess. We all know you're only trying to force him to stay engaged. You're not fooling anyone. I crushed the note in my palm. At the back of the classroom, Bianca sat surrounded by sympathetic girls, sniffling into a tissue. She glanced at me over her shoulder. And smiled. It was the kind of smile that came from winning. From knowing that no matter what she did, she could cry her way out of it. Not this time. I stood and walked straight to her desk. The room went silent. Bianca blinked up at me. Scarlett, is there something you need? I stared at her, cool and unblinking. You're the one who spread the new rumors, didn't you? Her eyes widened. What? Of course not. I don't know how the class found out. Save the performance, I said. We both know you're not that innocent. Before I could say another word, something slammed against my arm, Bianca's hand. She grabbed it, yanked it upward, and then slapped herself hard across the face using my hand. The sound cracked across the classroom. She stumbled backward, crashed into a desk and fell dramatically to the floor. Then she began to sob. I just like Damian, she wailed. Why do you hate me so much, Scarlett? Why? Students gasped. Scarlett hit her. I saw it, she grabbed her. No wonder Damian wants out. I stood motionless, staring down at her collapsed form. That moment something crystallized inside me. Bianca Moore wanted to play the victim? Then I'd let her. Because the best thing about second chances is knowing exactly how to end the game. There was a sharp sting in my cheek, though I hadn't been hit. It was the sound. The slap Bianca delivered to her own face using my hand. The performance. The sobbing. The way she threw herself across the room like she'd been shot. I hadn't expected it, not so soon, not in front of everyone. But that's what made her dangerous. She weaponized people's pity like a trained violinist tugging at emotional strings. "Scarlett hit her," one of the girls shouted. "Right in the face." I saw her yank her up. No wonder Damien looks so miserable these days. Their voices echoed around me like a warped chorus. Bianca curled on the ground, cradling her face. Damien rushed in seconds later, having heard the commotion from the hallway. His eyes found Bianca first, of course. "Bianca," he cried, kneeling beside her. "Are you okay? What happened?" Bianca sniffled, looking at me with wide, glossy eyes. "I was just sitting here, and she attacked me." "You what?" Damien snapped at me, standing up. "I didn't touch her," I said flatly. "She grabbed my hand and slapped herself." Damien let out a bitter laugh. "You really expect people to believe that?" "Check the CC, I said coolly. "She's bruised," he pointed at Bianca's reddened cheek. "She's scared out of her mind, and you're standing there like it's nothing. What's wrong with you?" The teacher entered then, eyebrows raised. "What's going on here?" "Scarlett assaulted a classmate," someone yelled. Bianca sobbed louder. Damien's jaw clenched. "Scarlett, Damien, Bianca. My office," the teacher said sharply. The hallway felt colder than usual as the three of us followed behind the teacher. Students poked their heads out of classrooms. Eyes. Whispers. Phones. I said nothing, because I didn't need to say a word. That pin fastened to my blazer, the simple butterfly-shaped brooch my mother had given me this morning, wasn't just decorative. It had been recording the entire incident. Every word. Every fake cry. Every calculated slap. Inside the teacher's office, the homeroom teacher, Mr. Ma, sat with his arms crossed. "Explain." Bianca launched into a sob story immediately. "She's always been cruel to me, sir. Ever since Damien and I became close. She's jealous. I try to avoid her, I really do, but she's unpredictable." Damien added fuel without hesitation. "Mr. Ma, I can't stay quiet anymore. If the school won't discipline her, I'll take this to the principal myself." "You want me expelled?" I said calmly. "I want you to stop hurting people." "I haven't hurt anyone," I replied. Damien scoffed. "Enough," Mr. Ma said. He reached for his phone and tapped into the class group chat. The sound of messages buzzing one after another filled the room. Then he hit play on a voice message sent just minutes ago. It was my mother's voice. "You've always been clever, Bianca, but I didn't raise my daughter to fall for your tears again. You may cry in front of Damien, but the rest of the world deserves to know the truth. Here's what really happened." Then the recording from my brooch began. Every student in the class group chat was now hearing it. Bianca's voice. The calculated slap. Her whisper to herself, "This will make them believe me." Pause. Then gasps. Dozens. Hundreds of them. Within the teacher's office, the silence was suffocating. Bianca's eyes widened in horror. Her lip trembled. "Wait, I didn't mean." Mr. Ma dropped his phone on the desk and stared at her. "That was your voice." Damien looked at her like she'd grown another head. "What? Bianca?" Bianca turned pale, visibly shaking. Then her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Damien lunged forward to catch her just before she hit the floor. "I'm taking her to the infirmary," he said stiffly. He turned at the door and glared at me, one last look filled with resentment. "You're unrecognizable," he muttered. And then he was gone. Back in the classroom, the air was different. All the chatter had died. I walked in, and the same students who'd accused me of cruelty suddenly couldn't meet my gaze. Jane, my desk mate, fidgeted in her seat. "Scarlett, I didn't know." "I'm sorry." Another student followed. "We shouldn't have believed her. That was twisted." A third added, "You're stronger than all of us." I'd have lost it if someone did that to me. I nodded politely but didn't say a word. Apologies once too late meant nothing. They hadn't known I'd died for these people in another life. That I'd risked everything only to be smeared, mocked, and burned to ash. And I wasn't going to explain myself to any of them. Let them whisper. Let them beg. They were background noise now. Later that afternoon, I stood on the rooftop, letting the wind rustle my hair. The sky stretched wide above me, quiet, cloudy, and endless. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. It's done. I knew that girl was trouble. But I didn't think she'd go this far. Be careful, sweetheart. She's desperate now. I typed back. Let her be. Her fall just started. I'm not done watching. After the recording was released, Bianca didn't return to class for 2 days. When she finally did, her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, her complexion pale under layers of foundation. But it wasn't guilt she wore, it was strategy. She hadn't been humiliated. She was rebranding. And Damien? He might have heard the truth, but he still played her shield. She clung to him like a lifeline and he let her. In the middle of class, she'd suddenly clutch her stomach and whisper, Damien, I feel dizzy. He would shoot to his feet, scoop up her books, and walk her out like a tragic hero. The teachers stopped asking questions. The students stopped caring. Everyone was exhausted by the drama. Everyone except me. I watched from the back of the room, silent and unmoved. Each time Damien's seat stayed empty, I scribbled another mock test question. Each time Bianca sniffled in the hallway, I highlighted another passage in my study guide. And each time someone muttered, she's still acting? After all that. I said nothing, because I knew how this ended. And they were already halfway there. The final mock exams were posted a week later. I ranked first. Damien didn't even place in the top 50. Rumors spread like wildfire. Damien Reed can't even get into community college. He showed up to school late that day, eyes sunken, wearing a hoodie under his uniform blazer. Bianca clung to his arm at the gate like she didn't notice the stairs. Like she didn't care that she was the reason for his collapse. And maybe she didn't, because Bianca never cared about anyone except herself. That evening, as I walked home from my evening study session, a sleek black car pulled up beside me just as I reached our gate. The window rolled down. Mrs. Reed's painted smile greeted me, though her eyes were anything but pleasant. Scarlett, darling. Can we talk? I didn't stop walking. She got out of the car and followed me to the gate. It'll only take a minute, she said. I sighed. Then speak here. I'm tired. She hesitated, clutching her purse tighter. Have you seen Damien's grades? I looked at her evenly. Yes. Then why haven't you helped him? I raised a brow. Excuse me. You've always been top of the class, she said. Damien used to follow right behind you. But ever since, everything, his focus has shattered. We all make mistakes, Scarlett. He just needs someone to keep him on track. I crossed my arms. That someone isn't me. She blinked. But you're his fiancé. I corrected. I've asked my father to cancel the engagement. Her smile faded. Scarlett, listen, I know things have been tense, but this alliance has always been important, for both families. Your father and my husband have built years of trust. Let's not ruin it over teenage drama. It's more than that, I said flatly. She stepped closer. Scarlett, think of Damien's future. He won't get into a good university without your help. But if you guide him, if you repeat the year with him, study with him, maybe even move into the same dorm later on. I took a sharp step back. You want me to repeat the year, I repeated, so Damien doesn't feel alone? She softened her tone. Just 1 year. After that, we'll throw you both the biggest engagement party the city's ever seen. You'll be celebrated, respected. Everyone will forget these silly rumors. I stared at her. The desperation behind her pearls and perfume wasn't subtle anymore. And now I understood where Damien got it. This sense that women were supposed to carry the weight of his downfall. You must think I'm still the girl who once ironed his tie, I said quietly. Her brows drew together. What? I'm not repeating the year. I'm not tutoring him. I'm not sacrificing my life so he can stay afloat while drowning in a sea he jumped into with full knowledge. She bristled. That's very selfish of you. And what's he been? I asked. Smart. Loyal. Worth my time. Scarlett. You're worried your son is failing, I cut in, voice sharp. You should be. But instead of facing the consequences of his own neglect, you're here begging the girl he betrayed to throw him a lifeline. Her lips thinned. Don't talk to me like that. And don't insult me with bribes wrapped in nostalgia. He straightened. You know the Reeds have always supported your father's projects. Your family's wealth. I held up a hand. My father is already reviewing the Reed Corporation's books. He's not pleased. She paled. I suggest you go home and advise your son to study, I added. Because whatever he's hoping to lean on, it won't be me. She stared at me, her mask of control cracking slightly. You'll regret turning your back on him. No, I said, opening the gate. I regret not doing it sooner. At dinner, I mentioned the conversation to my father in passing. He didn't even look up from his wine. I expected it. Is it true? I asked. Are you really pulling out? He nodded. Their cash flow depends heavily on our overseas suppliers. Once we cut that pipeline, they'll scramble. My mother sighed across the table. It's sad, really. They never thought you'd change. Never believed you'd stop chasing after him. I used to think I was the problem, I murmured. That I wasn't enough. My father set down his glass and looked me in the eye. Scarlett, you were always enough. You just gave it to someone who wasn't worth it. A long silence passed between us. Then I smiled. Thanks, Dad. That night, as I studied past midnight, a message popped up on my phone. From Damien. Can we talk? Please. Just for 5 minutes. At the alley behind the school. Tomorrow after prep. I stared at the screen for a moment, then slowly smiled. So the spiral had begun. And if he wanted closure, he'd get it. On my terms. The message came just as I finished annotating the last chapter of my physics guide. From Damien. Scarlett, I'm sorry for everything. I want to talk, just the two of us. After prep, meet me at the alley behind the school. Please. It was laughable, really, how predictable he'd become. In my past life, I would have rushed there in the dark, heart pounding with fragile hope. But this time I knew better. This wasn't Damien's idea. This had Bianca written all over it. So I replied with a single word. Then I forwarded the message to my father's assistant. Prepare surveillance, I typed. Same alley. Hidden angles. I want live backups in place by 8 p.m. My phone buzzed within seconds. Understood. The air that night was humid, clinging to my skin like a warning. The alley behind Brookshire Academy stretched long and narrow, its brick walls damp from a passing drizzle. A single streetlight flickered overhead. I stood at the entrance, calm and alert, a wireless mic tucked into my blazer and a small earpiece in my right ear. My driver was parked just a block away, waiting for my signal. 8:17 p.m. No Damien. Just as I'd expected. A pair of footsteps echoed behind me. I turned slowly. Bianca emerged from the shadows, her heels clicking on wet stone. She was holding Damien's phone. Surprised, she said sweetly. It was me. No, I said. But you should be. She tilted her head. Still acting smart, huh? You really think you've won just because of some stupid recording? You embarrassed me once, Scarlett, but I'm about to destroy you. I raised an eyebrow. With what? Your next sob story. No, she said, eyes gleaming. With this. She turned toward the far end of the alley and whistled sharply. From the darkness, 7 or 8 men stepped out, all rough-faced and built like they belonged on a crime watch bulletin. They carried metal rods, bats, and bad intentions. Bianca smirked. Meet my cousin's friends. Remember them? You should. You called the cops on them the first time. I said nothing. The leader of the group stepped forward and pointed at me. So this is the girl you said could cough up $1 million? Bianca nodded. She's the Lynn Corporation's heir. But we don't need the whole $1 million, just enough to scare her into silence. Break a few things. Nothing fatal. Unless she screams. My heart was steady. My palms were dry. This was the moment in my last life when panic would have taken over. But not this time. As I was ready. The second they stepped within 3 meters, a loud shout cracked through the air. Freeze. Hands up. From the shadows behind the alley walls, bodyguards swarmed in. At least 20 of them, cameras flashing, lights cutting through the night like spotlights. Their cameras zoomed in on the weapons, the men and Bianca, who stood frozen mid-gloat. The thugs panicked immediately, dropping weapons and trying to run. Don't let her escape, I said calmly into my mic. That one's mine. 2 guards flanked Bianca as she stumbled back. What is this? She shouted. You set me up? No, I said, walking closer. You set the stage. I just turned on the lights. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean to, I only wanted to scare you. You hired criminals. You arranged for me to be cornered. You lured me here with Damien's phone. I just wanted Damien to stop looking at you like you mattered, she screamed, suddenly losing her mask. He was mine until you came back stronger. I stared at her for a long moment, and then I laughed, because nothing was more pitiful than a manipulator unmasked. You think this is strength? I said. It's desperation. And now everyone will see it. My phone was already in hand dialing. Officer Chin? Yes, the girl you're looking for is at Brookshire Alley. With her hired attackers. I've got it all on camera. Bianca turned pale. No, please, Scarlett, don't ruin me. If my parents find out, if the school hears. I died once already, I whispered. You don't get a second chance to kill me. The police arrived 10 minutes later. The alley was flooded with blue lights and quiet chaos. Officers questioned the thugs who immediately turned on Bianca, stating she promised they'd only scare a rich brat. Bianca sat on the ground, wrists zip-tied, staring blankly at the pavement. When Officer Chin approached her, she finally spoke. Scarlett's family is powerful, she whispered. She'll destroy me. She didn't, Officer Chin replied. You destroyed yourself. By morning, the headlines blared across every campus news feed. Heiress targeted in alley ambush. Classmate caught orchestrating attack. Lin Corporation confirms attempted assault on daughter by Reed Fiancé. The school board issued an immediate expulsion recommendation for Bianca. Her family tried to intervene, but the evidence was airtight. As I slipped my phone into my blazer and walked toward the school gate, I spotted Damien leaning against a pillar. Dark circles under his eyes. Rumpled uniform. Guilt. I kept walking. But he stepped in my path and gently grabbed my sleeve. Scarlett, I'm sorry. I didn't know she'd do that. She nearly killed me, I said. Twice. I wasn't with her, he stammered. She tricked me too. She used your phone. He had no answer. I'll fulfill our engagement, he said finally. I'll end things with her. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I stared at him. And then I shook off his hand. It's too late, Damien. She doesn't have another chance. And neither do you. By the next morning, Brookshire Academy was no longer just a school. It was a headline. Heiress targeted in staged attack. Police confirm premeditated plot by classmate. School golden boy linked to alleged conspiracy, silence or complicity? Reed family engagement in shambles as corporate partnerships decline. Every screen on campus flashed those words. Every hallway echoed with stunned murmurs. Bianca had been expelled. Swift and brutal. And Damien? He was still allowed on campus, but he might as well have been invisible. Even his closest friends avoided eye contact. No one wanted to be caught standing beside a man whose girlfriend had orchestrated a violent attack. Especially when he defended her to the bitter end. That afternoon I received a text from Damien. Please. Just 5 minutes. Outside your house. I'll wait. I didn't reply. But when I stepped outside later to collect a delivery, I saw him there, sitting on the steps of our gate. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes hollow with fatigue. A bruised humility clung to him like dew. As I turned to go back inside, he stood and reached out. Scarlett, please. I paused but didn't face him. I didn't know she would go that far, he said. I swear. I didn't help her. I didn't even know she used my phone. Silence. He took a step closer. I've ended things with her. For good. I'll never speak to Bianca again. So I said nothing. I'll fulfill the engagement. We'll get through this. Together. I just need a second chance. I finally turned to him. You're not asking for love, I said. You're begging for rescue. His mouth opened but no words came. You think if you marry me the press will back off? That our family names together will erase your scandal? That's not true, he said quickly. I care about you. No, I cut in. You care about survival. And I'm not your lifeboat. He reached for my hand but I stepped away. There are no more chances, I said. Not for you. Not for her. The next day the Reeds returned. This time it wasn't for an apology. It was for a final plea. They didn't even make it past the gate. My father's assistant had strict instructions. No one from the Reeds enters without written approval. So they stood outside shouting. Scarlett. Mr. Reed bellowed. Come out here and explain yourself. You think you're invincible now? Mrs. Reed shrieked. You're just a spoiled little brat who ruined everything. You cost my son his exams. Mr. Reed roared. You owe us. The door opened. I stepped onto the threshold and leaned against the frame. You knew my parents were on vacation, I said coolly. You thought I'd be alone. Easier to manipulate. Their faces stiffened. Well, I smiled, you're not wrong. I am alone. But I don't scare easily anymore. Mrs. Reed took a breath. Scarlett, please. Don't punish Damien for this. He's your childhood friend. Your fiancé. Not anymore. She pushed Damien forward. Say something. He looked up at me, eyes sunken, hair unkempt, his pride crumpled like paper. I didn't take the exams, he said, voice cracking. I couldn't focus. Not with all this. You failed before the exams even began, I said flatly. Your obsession with Bianca cost you everything. He took a shaky step forward. Just give me one more chance. I'll repeat the year. I'll get into your university. I'll make you proud again. I couldn't help it, I laughed. It wasn't cruel. It was hollow. Exhausted. Ethan Reed, I said, deliberately using his full name, erasing the intimacy. You don't want to make me proud. You want to be rescued. His eyes flickered. My tone sharpened. You're not apologizing because you regret it. You're apologizing because you lost. A silence hung between us. I tilted my head. You know what's worse than betrayal? He didn't answer. Realizing you wasted your loyalty on someone who didn't deserve it. I turned and closed the door. The light in his eyes disappeared as the latch clicked into place. And the Reeds? They were escorted off the property by our security team. By the end of the week, the first public domino fell. Lynn Corporation officially pulls investment from Reed Holdings. Shortly after, Reed Corporation declares bankruptcy amid loss of key partnerships. Then, Reed Villa auctioned to cover debt, family evicted. I didn't even need to lift a finger beyond signing one contract. It had already been in motion. My father and I had worked in silence. All I did was finish what they started. 2 days before the college entrance exams, I flew to a private island to meet my parents. It had been planned weeks ago, a strategic vacation to remove them from media firestorms. We sat under the soft glow of lanterns, the ocean breeze warm against our skin. My father raised a glass. To peace. And freedom, I added. He smiled. You've handled this better than I ever could have imagined. I learned from the best. My mother reached over and held my hand. You didn't just survive, Scarlett. You made sure no one ever questions your worth again. I exhaled, finally letting the tension in my chest dissolve. Because for the first time I didn't feel like I was surviving. I was living. Back on the mainland, tabloids circled the Reeds like vultures. Photos surfaced of Damien sleeping in train stations, rummaging through trash, being chased after stealing food from street vendors. People who once praised him now used his downfall as clickbait. But I didn't read the stories. I didn't need to know how far he'd fallen, because that part of my life was closed. For good. The envelope arrived on a calm blue sky morning. No ceremony. No audience. Just a cream-colored envelope slid under my door, sealed with the university crest I'd long dreamt of since I was 15. I sat on the edge of my bed, the sunlight streaking across the hardwood floor as I peeled it open. Congratulations, Scarlett Lynn. We are pleased to offer you admission to the School of International Business and Policy. The words blurred for a moment, not from doubt, but from the quiet disbelief that, after everything, I had made it here. On my own. Without Damien. Without shame. Without sacrificing who I was. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. I didn't cry. I didn't scream with joy. I just breathed. For the first time in a long time, my breath didn't feel borrowed. It felt like mine. A week later, I returned to campus for my final transcript and transfer forms. No one looked at me with mockery anymore. No one whispered in the hallways. In fact, most turned away, unsure whether they were allowed to acknowledge me at all. I let them wonder. That same morning, my father called as I stood in the quad beneath a row of cherry trees in bloom. We finalized everything, he said, his voice calm and steady. All remaining Reed holdings connected to Lynn Corporation have been liquidated. They no longer exist in our books. Good, I said. They have nothing left. Their partners have dropped them. The creditors we tipped off reached them before they could even board a plane. I imagined the scene. The Reeds trying to flee the country only to be stopped at customs, their bags searched, their passports revoked. And Damien? I asked, not because I cared but because it was the final thread left uncut. Homeless, my father replied. A few tabloids got photos of him begging in Central Plaza last week. No one will hire him. No school will take him. I said nothing. You're not angry? He asked. No, I murmured. I'm clean. He paused for a moment, then said, You've grown so strong, Scarlett. Your mother and I are proud of you. I know, I said softly. I'm proud of me too. University came fast. Faster than I thought. I packed light. No lavish suitcases, no designer trunks like the daughters of other CEOs. Just 2 clean bags, a crisp planner, and a heart cleared of regrets. The dorm was modest but bright. My roommate, a quiet girl named Clara, offered me a soft smile and a bar of dark chocolate as a welcome gift. You're Scarlett Lynn, right? She asked. I nodded. I've read about you, she said hesitantly. You're kind of a legend. I laughed. Please don't say that. I just survived a series of very public disasters. You did more than survive, she said. I said nothing. Later that evening after orientation I wandered the campus grounds. The stone pathways, the ivy-covered walls, the wide-open green lawns, they all felt like they belonged to a version of me I hadn't met yet. And then I heard it. A low, sorrowful tune that curled through the trees like mist. I followed the sound and found a young man playing the violin on the lawn near the art building. He was dressed simply, black hoodie, jeans, slightly scuffed sneakers. But his posture was perfect. His hands moved with practiced grace, each note flowing like water, full of ache and promise. I stood still listening. It wasn't just music. It was truth. When the song ended, a few students clapped softly and walked on. He began packing up his case. Our eyes met. And he smiled, genuine, warm, unburdened. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition. The kind you feel when you see someone else who's also known pain. And come out of it still able to create something beautiful. I smiled back. That was it. Nothing grand. Just a small shared moment. A possible beginning. Weeks passed. My schedule filled with lectures, research, quiet nights at the campus cafe. I made friends but not the loud kind. The steady kind. People who didn't care about the Lynn family name. Who didn't care about scandals or headlines. I was just Scarlett. And that was more than enough. One late afternoon while organizing my desk, I came across a sealed envelope tucked between old notebooks. It was addressed to me in a familiar script. From Damian Reed. I turned it over. No return address. No demands. No plea written on the back. Just the weight of 1,000 unsaid words in a plain, unremarkable envelope. I stared at it for a while. Then I walked to the courtyard where the sun cast long shadows across the brick. I opened the letter and scanned it silently. It was exactly what I expected. Apologies. Excuses. Admissions. But no accountability. No true regret. Just words. I folded it shut, walked to the nearest metal trash bin and dropped it in. Then I lit a match. And watched it burn. That night I sat in the student cafe sipping chamomile tea. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. The last of the Reed-linked assets have been dissolved. You're free. I set the phone down and smiled. Across the table Clara slid me a cookie. And outside through the glass I saw the violinist again standing under a lamplight tuning his strings. He looked up. Our eyes met. He nodded once. And I nodded back. Not as Scarlett Lynn the heiress. Not as a girl who'd been betrayed and burned and buried. But as someone entirely new. Someone who had built herself from ash. Someone who had learned the difference between noise and music, between illusion and love. And someone who, at last, was ready to write her own story, on her own terms. The end.